It's time for Twig episode 43. I am joined by Kevin Marks, Gina, Trapani, and Jeff Jarvis to analyze Google's announcements. They've started coming in, and they continue to come in throughout the show. Lots of news from Google and Google I.O. It's all next on This Week in Google.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly. Cachefly.com. This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 43, recorded May 19th, 2010, live from Google I.O. This Week in Google is brought to you by Slingbox. Watch your favorite TV shows when you're away from home with Slingbox. Check out Slingbox at a Best Buy near you or at slingbox.com. And by Go to Assist Express. If you're in tech support, solve problems fast with the leader in remote support software, Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/twig. It's time for Twig This Week in Google, the show that covers Google and the Cloudiverse. Is that a word?
It is now.
I just made up a new word. That's Jeff Jarvis there. He's back in his office in New York City at the City University of New York.
I'm home today, actually.
Oh, you're home. All right, great.
Yes, I'm home.
And that's right, you are home. You were just in Ottawa this morning.
Yes.
Have a nice visit.
It's always pleasant. I love Canadians.
Were you speaking up there?
Yeah, I spoke about the future of Canadian media.
That's interesting, as opposed to other media.
Yeah, actually, they're in better shape than America.
Oh, interesting.
That's a whole other podcast.
Canadians are literate.
They are.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
And nice. Oh, they're so nice.
Nice.
That's always, the story is you bump into a Canadian, he apologizes.
The joke on Twitter today when I said something about this is somebody said the way you get a Canadian to apologize is by stepping on his foot.
Yep, there you go. Also here from San Francisco, just down the road a piece from Moscone Center. She's actually in the Pixel Core offices today. The author of The Complete Guide to Google Wave, Gina Trapani. Hi, Gina.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. You were at the keynote today.
I was in a nerd-filled room. It was very exciting.
Good.
For hours. We have much to talk about.
Many hours. It seemed to go on a long time.
It did go on a bit.
Also here to comment on Google I.O., Kevin Marks, who's in his office at British Telecom at BT. He's a part of Ribbit.com and a great commentator, a man who's been at Google, was a social, were you an evangelist? Social...
Advocate.
Advocate. There's a better word.
Better word than evangelist.
Where's the hierarchy there?
Well, the advocate is two-way. Evangelism is one-way.
There you go. Oh, I like it. I like it. Kevin is the proto-podcaster. He was the first to show the use of iPod with podcasts when he was working at Apple, worked on QuickTime and iChat. And it's so great to have you all here to talk about Google I.O. So what was, since you were in the audience, Gina, give us paint a picture of what it was like this morning at the, first of all, I have to say, this keynote is not the only keynote, is it?
No, it isn't. There's one tomorrow morning as well at 8:30 a.m. I don't know what they were thinking about that.
Somebody said that.
Developers, people. Developers.
Was it you who said, "Oh, that must mean Vic got a hotel"? Or maybe Kevin said this. Vic got a hotel room in San Francisco.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
He's not driving up from Mountain View, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of announcements that I thought were going to happen today that didn't, so I'm kind of holding out hope for tomorrow. So I actually am going to be there at 8:30 in the morning.
I guess it means we have to do our live coverage again because.
Yeah.
What was missing in the talk? What did you expect that you did not hear?
I expected to hear a lot more about Android. We didn't hear too much about Android.
There was zero Chrome OS and Android talk. Zero.
Well, there was some Chrome talk, right? So they announced the Chrome Web Store. So that was something Chromium related.
Right.
But yeah, no, not as much Chrome or Chrome OS as I expected. But the Chrome Web Store is probably the most exciting thing, I thought, for developers.
So we'll hold off. We can speculate on what Android announcements there might be. Apparently, Tim Bray says tomorrow is Android Day at the keynote, so it'll be worth getting up at 8:30.
Okay.
Oh God.
Especially since you all got the phones, there's got to be a payoff here. So.
Yeah, I mean they gave everybody who came to the conference from the U.S. They gave a Motorola Droid, And because that's CDMA, they gave the GSM Nexus 1 to the international developers who came.
Yep.
And still no 2.2 pushed out. I was hoping. I was looking for Froyo, but
Froyo, maybe tomorrow.
Froyo, where are you? All right. Well, let's talk about. How big a crew was it in there? Was it a large audience?
So I think it was 5,000 developers in attendance.
Holy cow!
In total, I don't know that all those developers were in that room, but it was packed. It was pretty packed. I was there fairly early and didn't get a seat anywhere really near the front.
There's no Fritos left in San Francisco.
Yeah. Not to mention Mountain Dew.
It was shoulder to shoulder, and I got to the coffee table, and everything but the decaf was already gone. It's pretty. They serve breakfast in the morning.
Burn.
Yeah, I got there pretty early. This is my first I/O, and I was all worried about being late. But checking in was you scan a barcode. I had the email from Google on my phone, and I scanned that barcode in the email and printed out my badge, and it was done. There was no line. That was great. But actually filing into the exhibit hall, it was exciting. It's a lot of like guys in T-shirts, as one would expect at a developer conference.
Yeah.
Kind of shoulder to shoulder with their laptops and iPads and Nexus 1s. I was trying really hard to snap pictures with my Nexus 1 and just upload them to Picasa, but the reception wasn't great in there, and the Wi-Fi was very, very spotty, which became apparent during one of their demos. I think that was kind of embarrassing for them.
They were doing an HTML5 demo of I guess it was Clicker, and he said, "I can't get online."
Yeah. And then later they did another developer demo of a new app that they'd built with Google Web Toolkit. It had an iPad and a Nexus 1 side by side, and wanted to show hey, when you add this record, it just pops up automatically on this other device. And it didn't, and it was painful, and it was embarrassing.
Yeah,
Everybody in the room really wanted it to work, and it wasn't quite working. They had to try it once or twice, and there was nervous laughter. Everyone applauded when it finally did work. But it's one of those things where you're just this shouldn't happen. And they have speaker-specific Wi-Fi, but still, even that was kind of spotty. So that was a bit painful, but the rest was very fun.
It became pretty clear. I mean, we covered it live as part of our new initiative to do more live coverage on TWiT. We covered it live here. Tom Merritt and I were watching your wave as you and Kevin and Adam Pash waved what was going on in there. And it became pretty clear right away that Google did not see this as Apple, for instance, sees its WWDC keynote as a big public event. They were talking to developers, weren't they?
It was very developer heavy, and I was saying this. Earlier. Apple, for better or for worse, Apple set this precedent. That their developer conference involves this big, exciting consumer product launch. So it's. So you go to something like I/O, and I was hoping for something like, big Google TV launch today, or I was thinking that something as sort of big as the iPad or the iPhone was going to happen. And, there was a lot of really great news for developers, but it was very, very developer specific. I mean, at one point they were running, they had the command line up on a Ubuntu desktop, and we were watching text output kind of fly by on the big screens. And I was like, wow, this wouldn't ever happen at WWDC keynote ever in a million years. So in a way, I was like, oh, yes, this is wonderful. These are my people. But at the same time, I was like, oh, this is boring.
Do you think, Jeff, that Google missed an opportunity? I mean, here's a chance to speak to the world. I mean, I at first thought, oh, well, maybe nobody's watching. But then all the Twitter trending topics in the U.S. were about Google I/O. People were watching.
Yeah, but I think that the future to Google's success is the developer community. And so doing something just aimed at them, I think, makes a lot of sense. What it does say is what they have to do, too, is a consumer piece. They had Zeitgeist in London last week, and as I tweeted, what do I have to do to get invited to this? Write a friggin' book? But that's aimed at a very high-end community. The developer event, I think when you look at the future of Chrome and the future of Android, it rests entirely on developers' shoulders. So I think making really nice with developers and talking directly to them about the things that matter to them, I think makes a lot of sense. But they also they're becoming more, they are a consumer brand. They're the #1 consumer brand in the world, for God's sakes. They've got to speak to consumers.
There is no event that they could do that. I mean, this is their event. There is no other event.
They could make an event.
Right.
I think they could make it.
They could make an event. And I think they should make another event for consumers, for product launches for consumers.
Yeah.
This didn't feel like this wasn't the right stage to expect a big consumer launch, and that was probably partially my mistake. It was great for developers, but I think for the public watching, for people who are just kind of interested in Google, I think that it probably was a disappointment. Although I'm not sure. I mean, what was the reception like? I didn't get to watch Twitter too closely.
I was watching it, but they were just bullet pointing it. Kevin Marks, you're a developer as well. I mean, you develop for
developer, but
but Ribbit is a plugin for Wave. Did you get the message received from Google?
Well, no, I mean, it was. I think what you're saying is right. I think the second half of the keynote was a very dense thing that was aimed at the in-house developers who work with a particular tool set. And it was very interesting for them, but the rest of us were like, "Where's the? If we're waiting for Android, we're clearly in the wrong keynote." And
right.
The stuff they announced earlier on and the upfront stuff was interesting. The VP8 announcement is obviously very interesting.
Yes.
Getting the commitments to HTML5 from a bunch of other people was also good. And the other stuff was, I think they were covering different set of audiences with different bits of the keynote.
You said that, you noted that in the Wave. You said, okay, now we've gone to corporate developers.
Well, they was talking about hosting Java applications. They were talking about App Engine. What do they call it? App Engine Professional or something like that. App Engine for Business.
App Engine for Business.
And then they were saying, and we can second source this with VMware and Spring and deploy it to more than one place. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that corporate developers think, oh, that's really important. I've got second sourcing. I can write stuff in Java and it's great. And all the web people are going, Java, do we have to try that again? Yeah. So it's a slightly different set of communities. So they were addressing two communities in the two halves of the thing. The first half was the sort of the web people, the people who are building all the websites, who are building front end stuff and back end stuff in the dynamic languages, and then the second half was clearly a bunch of people who targeting the Java programmers who were. A lot of them are writing the in-house things. They were saying, look, here's our expense reporting app. That's our example application. You should be excited about this. And everyone's going, what? Is that exciting?
Yes. And the expense report was like for a $150 dinner. And you're kind of like, when's the last time? Well, I was thinking, when's the last time I expensed a $150 dinner? Clearly, I'm doing the wrong. I'm working for the wrong company. I need to be working for a big company. Developers actually started to leave toward the end. People were getting up and leaving. It wasn't a mass exodus, but it was certainly like several developers were getting up and leaving, which surprised me because I had this thing in my mind like there's going to be one last big thing, and there really wasn't.
There were at least two things that could have been the last big thing. We thought there would be a Google TV announcement. Froyo or something having to do with Android seemed to be on the docket. Now maybe tomorrow that's when they'll announce those two things. Was there anything else missing that we expect? Oh, everybody said that Google was going to do an S3 competitor.
Google Storage,
Google Storage. I mean, they
announced that, didn't they?
Well, they announced it on the blog, and they announced it for developers, not for end users, as S3 kind of is.
And is Google Storage part of App Engine for Business?
Well, maybe,
or is it's a separate?
No.
It was, it just shows kind of a little disjointedness in terms of Google's messaging, because while the keynote's going on, their blog post goes live about this storage for developers, and they tweet about it, and I'm watching Twitter going, there's a Google I.O. tweet that has nothing to do with the keynote that we're watching right now. I can't figure it out. Are they out of order? What happened? It was just surprising. It's not really a criticism. You're right, Gina. In some ways, it's kind of refreshing.
I think partly is that this is their big bang to announce a lot of stuff, and some stuff makes it to the keynote, and some stuff is going out in sessions.
Right.
So they announced the Google font directory and the font API stuff, which is a nice project. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that they'll be rolling out. They'll be talking about Buzz APIs and things. And some stuff got put into the keynote because they thought that was a core message. But because they're only webcasting a bit of the conference, the rest of these announcements seem a bit fuzzy. But basically, it's just like everyone inside Google has been lining stuff up to talk about it this week, and they want to announce it there so they can show the developers it and have the conversation with the developers in the building.
So they should just have a summary of what else is going on. They're not thinking like media, oddly.
It is odd.
Right. I mean, if they just had a blog post saying, here's everything that happened today.
I'm sure they'll do roundups, but it's Google is very distributed. There are lots of teams working on different things, and they all get a little time slot here, and actually pulling that together is going to be hard for them. They're not a very one big message type company.
Yeah.
No, it's true, but I think you could hire one producer for the day who says, okay, let's put it all together.
Anyway,
Anyway, here we are criticizing the showbiz of it.
Right. It's kind of fine because it just shows. A slick Google might scare me.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah. And it kind of makes you happy that they're just a little kind of disorganized or a little bit like engineer.
It's like the federal government. We're kind of glad they're a little inept because the last thing you want is a super efficient Google. Like they really know what they're doing. God,
they're Cylons.
They're Cylons. That would be scary. All right. Well, let's talk about. There were some, I think, significant announcements, and I want to parse those in just a second. I think something really big to talk about. But first, before we do that, I would like to welcome a brand new sponsor to the show and the network. They sponsored for the first time our breaking coverage this morning, and we're really thrilled to have them because I use them. I know, Jeff, you use them as well. We're talking about Slingbox. It's a way to watch your favorite TV shows when you're away from home. And if you haven't yet tried a Slingbox, you're going to love this. Now, here's the deal. It's very simple. There are 3 steps. You buy a Slingbox. You connect it to your DVR or your cable, whatever TV inputs you have at home, and you connect it to the internet. That's it. There's no step 4. Now, you can, on almost any device, your BlackBerry, your iPhone, your iPod Touch with Wi-Fi, Mac or Windows, log on and see what's coming out of your cable box anywhere you are in the world, as long as you get internet access. The quality's fantastic. You have a remote control that lets you control these devices, reset recordings, and so forth. So here's my suggestion. Go to Best Buy, buy a Slingbox, bring it home, hook it up. Within a minute, 5 minutes, you'll be able to watch Slingbox. And, the new iPhone application is great because you can do it on Wi-Fi or 3G. There are applications coming for other platforms, like the Android is just around the corner. I've been playing with the beta. I'm sure they've got an iPad app coming. That's going to be the killer app. Slingbox on the iPad will be bing, presto. In fact, it's not just when you travel, just anywhere in the house. If you've got a Slingbox hooked up, you'll be able to walk around and watch TV. Check out Slingbox at a Best Buy near you. Go to slingbox.com for more information. And we thank Slingbox not only for supporting the network, but also for helping us do more breaking news, because that's really one of the things I really wanted to do with the network in general is when there's tech news out there, I want to be able to cover it, and Sling is making that possible. So thank you, Slingbox. Slingbox.com for more information, or just head out to a Best Buy near you. So there were some announcements. In fact, I think nothing that we didn't expect. I think the VP8 announcement was expected. Kevin, you as the guy who did QuickTime, I think you're probably best able to explain what this means.
Okay, I'll give it a go. So there's been a long-running battle over video formats, audio and video formats on the web. And back in the 90s and 2000s, we had basically QuickTime and Microsoft and Real fighting over this. And if you want to play video, you had to pick one or put more than one format up.
And if you wanted to do it in a browser, you had to download the software. You had to put a plugin in.
You had to download a plugin. Yeah, you have a plugin to do that. When Flash added video, because Flash, I wrote about this a couple of years ago. So when Flash added video to Flash, the value that they had was that Flash was already installed in 95% of browsers. Whereas
not to play back video. I think a lot of people think of Flash as a video player, but not to play back video. But
no, it was
for interactivity. It was widgets and stuff.
It was originally Future Splash in 1993 or whatever it was, and it was vectors, and it was a vector system. And then it was, and then they added more features over time. And made it more of an interactive programming system, sure. And then they added video, can't remember exactly when, 2002, 2001, something like that. And they picked a sort of fairly old and not great video codec for it. But because they were broadly installed and they'd actually focused on getting installed in as many browsers as possible and not being annoying, whereas everyone else seemed to have some second-order agenda that...
Oh, God, Real Networks was an abomination.
Pop-up ads and destroyed themselves. Yeah. Microsoft and Real were about getting you to download the player and then selling ads in the player, and there was always some kind of annoyance there. Whereas Flash focused really well on getting it everywhere, so they became the thing that you used to play video. Now, their codec wasn't very good.
Was it Sorensen? Was that what they were using?
They were using, the Sorensen one, and then they were using VP3.
And they do VP6 now as the kind of default codec.
Well, no. What they switched to was so there was H.264. Now H.264 is the successor to MPEG video. MPEG video was what we used for
QuickTime
video back in QuickTime had a whole pile of weird codecs.
That's right. It had a bunch of them, didn't it?
MPEG was standardized. So MPEG 4 was like the iteration of the standardized video. We use MPEG 2 for broadcast TV, for example.
Right.
So MPEG 4 was an iteration of that. And one of the codecs in that was H.264. And that was standardized by Apple. Apple worked to help standardize that and get that in there. It was standardized as part of a Blu-ray format. And it's been built into a lot of cameras, and there's chipsets for it. So H.264 is the de facto standard for video now, and it's what everyone will now play. So,
and it's a good codec. It has a lot of features. I mean, it scales beautifully depending on your bandwidth. It works at almost any bandwidth. Gives you something.
Yeah. So it's there and it works, but it has expensive licensing, which means you can't distribute it with an open source browser. You can't distribute open source versions of it, or rather, that's not strictly true because the way the licensing works, you can distribute open source versions of it as long as you don't distribute many. It's kind of weird. Basically, what happened was that Apple held a gun to the head of the MPEG LA a while back and got them to agree this license that was a per unit royalty, but with a floor and a ceiling. So below a certain number you didn't pay, and above a certain number you just paid a flat fee, which means that if you're a large company, you can pay the $5 million a year or so and license it, which means that Apple and Adobe and Microsoft
no big
and
deal.
Google and anyone else who at that scale has a known amount they pay per year. So that makes sense. They'll do that compared to
But Mozilla might not want to.
But Mozilla doesn't want to. So Mozilla didn't want to do that. So the current battle over video and HTML5 was there's now a way to express I want to embed a video here, where you just put video, here's the file, that's it, like embedding an image, which seems like a great thing, except getting people to agree on the format of the video is this sort of brings in all this giant standards and patent war. And so
now, how analogous is this to the image tag? Because the image tag doesn't specify JPEG, GIF, or PNG. The browser renders it. And now, as we know, JPEG and GIF are encumbered. PNG is not.
JPEG isn't anymore.
JPEG's not, okay.
And GIF has expired now.
Okay. So they're all encumbered, and a browser renders them all. There was a time when Unisys said, well, we want royalties for GIF.
Yeah, no, and when I was at Apple, a friend of mine had one of those Millennium Countdown clocks he'd adjusted to when the GIF patent expires so that he can ship it.
Oh, how interesting. Oh, how funny.
Because Apple wouldn't pay the royalty.
Right.
So, but in the same way, we've got this issue with audio. With MP3, you have to pay money to.
It's encumbered as well. Fraunhofer owns it.
It's encumbered too, but all the browsers have sort of dealt with that. So what's happened? What happened is Mozilla stuck their heels in and said, "We're not going to pay the money. We're not going to ship 264." And then it got into a patents are evil type thing. It also got into a warning that these patents have some time to run, and although the fees are set at that rate at the moment, they're going to go up. They potentially can go up in the future. They've only agreed the fees for the next 2 years. And clearly, if everyone does stand on H.264, then the MPEG LA can suddenly go, ha, now we can raise our prices on you.
Now, now, Microsoft and Apple are both members of MPEG LA.
Yes, but that's just because they have a few video patents.
Okay.
The bulk of
So who determines the course of action that MPEG LA chooses?
A combination of the members. So Apple and Microsoft will have some votes on that.
They'd have a vote, but not all the votes.
But I think they're both paying in more than they get out from it.
That's right, yeah.
And the part of the point in the patent pool is it's a demilitarized zone. It stops you suing each other. So they get enough of the patents together that Panasonic and Sony and everyone else who's got patents in that pool, Philips, will basically agreeing not to sue each other.
It's mutually assured destruction. You sue me, I'm going to sue you, and the whole thing.
Yeah, which is we're seeing that in the phone market at the moment.
Right.
There's a sort of patent fight going on there.
Right.
But the video stuff has been fairly messy over the years.
So H.264 is technically very good, but it's patented.
It is patent encumbered.
There was some thought about Og Theora, which is an open source
So Og Theora is based on an earlier version of the codec from this group that Google just bought.
VP3.
It's based on VP3, and this is VP8. And basically, they added one each time they came up with a new way of doing it that was compatible.
So it's pretty old.
So it's VP3 was fairly old. The quality was it's okay. You know, it's not terrible quality. And the other thing is there's this sort of weird thing about codecs where you agree the decoding model first. And then over time, the encoders get better because they get better at adjusting things to fit that decoding model. So a bunch of people have shown stuff with Theora that looks pretty good and works quite well. And there's always a trade-off in quality and bandwidth. And to some extent, there's not a huge difference in how these codecs work. There's just some subtleties there. Microsoft has VC1, which basically they took 264 and then iterated on it a bit more and tuned it more for their processors. And that is actually a bit nicer than 264. But it's and Microsoft will give it away free, but they won't give you source to, you got to do a source license. So that sort of founded on their inability to open source it as well, if you like. So what what we have with VP8 is something that Google has bought the IP to, they bought the engineers to work on it, and now they said they're going to open source that and build it into this WebM project, which is at webmproject.org. Which is the idea is they're going to use the Matroska media container.
You're kidding? It's using Matroska?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Vorbis audio and VP8 video.
I didn't hear the Matroska part. Huh.
I haven't actually looked at the Matroska containers, but they went with them.
It's widely used on pirated video. That's how I know about it.
But I haven't actually looked. I don't know the data structure of it well enough.
And the only reason I'm very aware of it is because it's very difficult to play back on some hardware. Apple TV, for instance, you have to unwrap the Matroska wrapper to get to the underlying MP4 so you could play it back.
Are those MKV files?
That's MKV.
Yeah, those are always a pain.
Ugly.
Yeah, they're ugly.
But maybe, but it's all about implementation.
I haven't looked at the inside of it, so I can't comment on the ugliness. So it's interesting that they didn't pick OGG as the format, because I have some issues with OGG, but I haven't looked at Matroska enough to.
Apple made noise that. Well, remember Steve Jobs' email, and Microsoft has said the same thing, that Theora is not as unencumbered as one might think.
So there was this issue of what they call submarine patterns. So when I was at Apple, I spent a chunk of time working on QuickTime. I was trying to get them to ship Vorbis as part of QuickTime because I thought it was an interesting codec.
It's an audio-only codec, right?
It's an audio-only codec. It's a nice codec. It has some slight weirdnesses to it, but it's because it's not. Well, I can go into details, but it's quite clever in that it divides. It has variable-sized chunks depending on whether it's trying to encode something that's percussive or something that's tonal. And so most audio codecs have fixed-sized chunks, and it has variable-sized chunks, and it can use different bits for that.
So it's VBR, but it's even VBR within the packet.
It's VBR, but it's VBR at a sort of low-level structure level, which makes it quite hard to write code to deal with. But anyway, we could have worked around that. But I ran into the same thing. I went to the Apple guy, said, I want to ship this. And they said, well, okay, let's talk about can we license it from someone? I said, no, it's open source, we can ship it. And they said, well, no, you can't, because if you do, we could get sued. And if we get sued by the MPLA, we won't be able to play DVDs anymore, and we're shipping machines that play DVDs. And thank you very much. If you stop us doing that, then I'm going to be in trouble. And so their whole, their worry was, because they've signed up to the patent pools, multiple of these patent pools, and they're a big enough target to sue, they didn't want this to happen. And they've still said this consistently in the HTML5 discussions about there may be submarine patents. We may get sued by Dolby. We may get sued by Fraunhofer Labs. We may get sued by somebody else over Vorbis. We may get sued over the video patents. That could happen too. And we're not willing to take this risk. And basically, Google today has said we're willing to take that risk. We're going to ship this thing. We're going to open source it. If you have submarine patents, hi, we're a big target. Come sue us. Not in quite so many words, but effectively, they've said we're going to call the bluff of this sort of fear about submarine patents because this is a good thing to do. And I think it is a good thing to do. I suspect we're not going to get rid of 264 or even the other older formats overnight because we have a bunch of devices that will only play those because they're hardware. What they said was, and it wasn't quite clear exactly what they said. They said converting the YouTube videos to this format, starting with the 720p and up ones, So what they may end up doing is saying, okay, we're going to do the highest bandwidth stuff using VP8, and then the lower quality ones will use 2644, so they will still play on your Apple devices, but the better looking stuff will be using this new codec. And the other piece, the other sort of surrounded announcements was they had Mozilla and Opera stand up and say they supported, which is not surprising. This is exactly what Mozilla wanted, an open source codec they can ship. But they also had Kevin Lynch of Adobe saying that Adobe is going to ship VP8 in the next version of Flash. And there was also a note from Microsoft saying, if you install a VP8 codec on Windows, we'll play VP8 too, which is slightly disingenuous, because they didn't say if you install a Matroska importer and blah, 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 but they were basically saying, because IE8 delegates media playback to the operating system, if you can get the operating system to play it, Internet Explorer will play it too.
It seems like they should just bundle the damn codec, but
there's one. Both halves of that are tricky. So Safari and IE basically delegate this to the OS, whereas Firefox and Chrome try and embed the stuff themselves. And they will call plugins in some circumstances, but not others. So I found this when I was trying to do an audio show like this. We were using Shoutcast, which I thought everyone could play because it's just MP3 files stuck together in a long thing. And Chrome wouldn't play it because Chrome wasn't delegating it back to anything. It was just saying, "Don't understand. I'm going to give you an error dialog," rather than throwing it out to Flash or QuickTime or whatever else people have installed. So that was interesting for me to see that. The assumption that I was making that this is an old format, everything can play it, is now getting broken because they're tying the formats up with the actual browsers that are running them.
There's a really good post on x264dev.multimedia.cx in which he analyzes VP8, and I don't know if he's known or respected in the community or if he knows what he's talking about, but he does have a lot to say about it. One of which is that the spec for VP8 is basically C code from it's the source code, so it's not an easy spec to decode if it were. He also says the Matroska. Yeah, it's x.264dev.multimedia.cx. He says Matroska is actually a good container. He says it's not even very surprising they chose it. It's one of the most widely used, quote, modern container formats and is in many ways best suited to the task. He says MP4, which is another container, is not very flexible. Also, Matroska has streaming in the spec. I like to hear that. You don't have to do the hacky chunk streaming that MP4 does.
Well, streaming in the spec can be a damage. I mean, that's basically why OGG is bad, because they assume that you were streaming, and they basically encoded packet sizes into the spec, which makes it quite hard to generalize it.
Okay.
I should read up more on Matroska.
I would love to get your take on this. He says one possible problem is that since almost nobody currently uses Matroska for live streaming purposes, very few existing Matroska implementations support what is necessary to play streamed files. He also says that the VP8 spec itself, and again, I'm quoting his bottom line, is significantly weaker than H.264 compression-wise. He says it is as good as H.264 baseline or VC1, probably better, but not as good as H.264 main. So technically, it may not be as good a codec, but it might be good enough. The choice of Vorbis makes a lot of sense for the audio, since AAC is encumbered and MP3 is encumbered.
Yeah. No, Vorbis is as I say, it's a different audio codec, but it's quite interesting, and its quality is good.
Yeah.
Certainly, people. No one's the complaints about Vorbis have never been the quality's bad. It's
nothing plays it. Off. Yeah.
We put out
Vorbis versions of a number of our shows, including our open source show. We stopped doing that, except for the open source show, which is there was literally hundreds of people listening, not thousands.
Sure, everyone uses MP3s for audio.
Yeah, MP3 is kind of a lingua franca, but the Orbis files were roughly the same size and sounded just as good.
They actually sound better than MP3 in stuff with high dynamic range.
Yeah,
if you got classical music, then Vorbis tends to sound a bit better because it has that short long packet thing going on. But yeah, it's nuanced.
So
MP3 is pretty old now.
So there in a nutshell, or a coconut shell anyway, is the history of VP8 and the codecs. Google adopting or promoting an open source codec is a good thing if everybody goes for it. They had Opera there and they had Mozilla there, so obviously they're going to go for it. The big question mark, there's two big question marks. One is hardware support. There's almost all machines now have hardware H.264 encoding built in, either through the GPU or the CPU. And that makes a big difference in playback and the amount of CPU cycles used and the size of the device. They did show a slide, which I quickly tried to parse, that showed ATI and NVIDIA on the team, as well as Qualcomm, which makes a Snapdragon chip that's used in a lot of phones, a lot of the Google phones. Apple, I didn't see anything. I didn't see ARM, but I might have missed it, and I definitely didn't see Intel. I was looking hard to see Intel in there. So there will be possibly some hardware support down the road. And then the other kind of big question mark is, what'll Apple and Microsoft do? Because of course they make two very important browsers. Microsoft says they're going to, as you said, going to include support if you have the codec on IE9. Apple's silent on all of this.
Sure.
I think it's going to take, Apple's going to have to get behind it if it's going to take off. Don't you think that it'll have to be supported on the iPhone and the iPad if it's going to take off?
I think, that you don't have to at Apple. I think Apple may end up doing it, at some point. I'm not sure how religious they are about it, but they've made a commitment to a particular set of specs. And
is there any reason they wouldn't? I mean, they promote HTML5, and if this becomes the HTML5 video standard, which, by the way, that hasn't happened yet either, has it?
Well, HTML, as I say, HTML5 video doesn't define the codecs, as you say.
So there's no body that would say, W3C is not going to say, good, we endorse VP8.
No, that's more of a practice thing.
That's in practice. So that's what the browsers do, not what W3C
so video,
does.
Yeah, that's more of an install-based thing.
Okay.
So I think the issue for Apple is that they've got portable devices with low-power CPUs with hardware acceleration to do this stuff, and they've designed that with 264 in mind, and it's particular profiles of 264 and so on. And the question is, could you adapt those to do this? And if so, how? And then how would you deploy that? So it's certainly not impossible they could do that. They can make that work. And it may be that the chipsets will pick up on that in the future, but they've still got the issue of do they want to put that effort in, or will people keep doing 264 for them?
Right.
Because you've got to remember that YouTube supporting 264 was originally them and Apple working together, so they could supply something that the iPhones could play. At that point, YouTube was still primarily using the older Flash codec for most of their stuff, because for various issues, because it had the broadest install base. And it took a while for the 264 stuff to swap over on YouTube.
So I'm sorry, Gina and Jeff, if you've fallen asleep.
No, that's okay. Streaming video is important to TWiT.
Yeah.
Kind of matters to me a little bit.
Of course.
But I think it's important in general. I mean, this is a big part of the web these days, and YouTube may be the biggest player of all. Is the biggest player of all. So what YouTube does
is the biggest player in video. Yeah.
Yeah, what YouTube does makes a
But
big.
we already have Apple not playing YouTube.
Right.
So where does that go here? If Apple refuses to play along, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, they could on the iPhone and the iPad, right? It launches a YouTube app, right? So it doesn't have to play inside
and
the
it plays
mobile
it basically. It's my understanding, it plays it within QuickTime, right? On the iPad and the iPhone, the QuickTime player launches.
The iPad doesn't launch an app necessarily. The iPad can do embedded. I think for YouTube it does still launch an app, but if you embed video in the web on an iPad, it
can play in the window, yeah. And but it's using the QuickTime code.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's some piece of QuickTime. I'm not sure it plays everything QuickTime can play.
Okay.
But
here's what I'm asking. Does this become an everybody against Apple thing, potentially? If Adobe is now playing along and Microsoft...
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Adobe was there on stage.
Well, that's the FU and Steve.
Yeah.
Fine. We'll play with the Steve. We'll go play with the bigger brother over here.
I called it the axis of not evil.
Well,
I like that.
Flash, the point of from Flash's point of view, they want to remain relevant and useful system for playing stuff back. And so if you say, here's a codec, we'll deal with the IP, you can have it, please distribute it, they're going to go, yeah, that's nice. That's cheaper than the 264. Remember, they've got the same issues as Google and everyone else has with the MPEG-LA, which is if they become totally reliant on that, MPEG-LA can then hold them to ransom and say, right, this year the patent license fee is $50 million, not 5 million. No. So there is an interest for these guys to come up with something like this. The challenge has always been, can we stand up to this in court legally? And that's the sort of bet that Google is taking. That's the kind of big bet they took when they bought YouTube and got the Viacom lawsuit shortly afterwards. The bet they took with Google Books, where they took the publisher's lawsuit on and said, okay, we'll fight this. And or the bet they did when they invested $5 billion in potentially buying a mobile license to try and get better terms out of that. So it's the kind of sort of high level calculation that Google will make to say we will invest some of our treasure, if you like, in doing something like this that will change the environment of the web.
Mm-hmm. I think that was the main message of Google I/O in general, was just open standards, promote innovation. Promoting innovation using open standards, keeping the web open. So this is, and Colleen made this point earlier. I mean, this is Google investing a lot of money into buying something and making it open for everyone to use to make the web better in general for everyone. Because when the web's better for everyone in general, it's better for Google.
And isn't that flipping the bird at Apple then? Don't we get to
absolutely
a closed versus open world here? And that's the bifurcation we're seeing. Apple,
definitely
closed, high quality, no porn, all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Google says that the weapon against that is openness.
Right.
Definitely.
And so where does Apple go? So what happens in Apple today?
So but Vic was doing a bit of that at the beginning, where he was having a slight poke at Apple, and it's not that fair when you're talking about HTML5, because actually Apple did this visionary thing a few years ago of building WebKit and open sourcing it, and Google is able to build on that too. And you want to give them credit for doing that, because that is what's really transformed the browser market. And they clearly had a motive for doing it because they wanted it to run on their devices, but they were good enough to open source that such that it's running on the Android devices too, and that does actually broaden up the whole thing. So it's the same. It's a classic, commoditize your compliments thing of Apple wants to sell hardware, therefore they want to make sure people can have stuff running on their hardware, so they have an interest in open source. Google wants to sell advertisements, so they want to make sure that the web is open enough that it's viable, can be used across all platforms, and no one else can gatekeep that piece from them. So they have a strong interest in it not being locked down in any way that's going to restrict them. So there are tensions at the edges there, but the value in the long run is that we get open source technologies that we can use in many other environments, and that is encouraging.
It is interesting though that Google, rumored in Froyo in 2.2, maybe Gina, you can comment on this. When you launch the browser, pushes you to a Flash 10.1 site where Flash-enabled websites are featured. That Google is, there may be a little tit for tat here. Adobe may have been on stage. Yeah, Adobe may have been on stage today in gratitude to Google for really pushing the fact that Android supports Flash.
Have you seen this, Leo, or has someone written up like an early builder for you?
It was a write up. Let me see if I can.
So does this mean that my Android phone's battery is going to go down?
Yeah, that's a good question. They're really pushing 10.1 on Froyo.
Yeah, I worry about the Flash thing. It's like I hope that it's just not a matter of lower standards. The fact that Jobs said, Adobe hasn't been able to provide a handheld device running Flash that performed in an adequate, to our level. I just hope that Google isn't lowering their standards just to be able to flip the bird at Apple and say, well, we're going to work with Adobe.
I would hope that too. And maybe, though, they can rationalize it in their mind because they've also opened this codec up and they're giving it away. So Google may be just saying, look, we don't care. Well, open means not just open source. It means open. It means everything.
Yeah.
We don't say no to anything.
Right. Right. You know,
Yeah.
you said earlier something about, Google wanting to sell ads with the Chrome Web Store. I mean, they're not just going to be selling ads now. I mean, they're going to be selling web apps.
Well, let's talk about that. That's next. That's our next topic. I think these are the two big announcements so far today at Google I/O was VP8 and the Chrome Web Store. We're going to talk about the web store in just a little bit. Gina Trapani is here. She's actually in San Francisco for Google I/O and has very kindly decamped from the conference center to next door in the Pixel Core studios. Thanks to Pixel Core for letting us use their studios. All right, I hope you're not missing anything important, Gina.
No, Miss Twig, something important? Not possible. Twig is my something
we'll
important.
We'll get this over with, then you can go back. I know we were hoping to do a Twig a little bit earlier, but you did go to the Wave.
I did.
Session.
I had to go to the Wave Fireside Chat because I just had to, I had to see the Wave team in person. That was really fun.
Yeah, and I can't leave that out. There was also a big Wave announcement.
There was. It'll be my tip.
Which made Gina smile.
Did.
Also with us, of course, Jeff Jarvis. He's in his home, but he's back in the States after a trip to Canada. And he's at the website buzzmachine.com. Great to have you, Jeff. And Kevin Marks from British Telecom and Ribbit.com. More to come in just a moment. Before we go much further, though, I would like to say hello to our friends at Citrix and the folks who give you GoToMeeting, GoToMyPC, and the ultimate tool for people who have to help others. And if you listen to this show, chances are you're the tech support person for quite a few people, family, friends, maybe you even work in the business. You ought to know about GoToAssist Express. I've been using it since the screensavers days to fix people's computers. The latest version of GoToAssist Express is incredible. Fast, effective, secure, works on Macs and PCs, so you can support anybody, anywhere. In fact, recently named the worldwide market leader in remote support by Frost & Sullivan. It's the #1 remote support solution because it's easy to use, it's affordable, it's secure. You don't have to pre-install software on your customers' computers either. You just send them a link, and within less than a minute, they're ready to go. They can set it up so you have unattended access. You can run up to 8 sessions at once, which means you can get an install going or a fix and go to the next machine, so you waste no time waiting. You can get an assay of what software is running on that machine, including the operating system and any security software running in the background. It's just a really handy tool. They have day passes. That's what I do. I stack up all my support requests, and then I do a day pass. But a month-to-month is good, too, if you do a lot of support. From Citrix, everything you do, 128-bit SSL encrypted, 24/7 customer support. Try it right now, free for 30 days. You know, this might be enough to get it all done. Just go to gotoassist.com/twig, and it's yours for free for 30 days. gotoassist.com/twig. We thank them so much. Citrix is such a great supporter of the TWiT network. We thank you, Citrix, for all you do for us. So tell us, Gina, about the web app store. I thought this was very interesting, but I wasn't sure I quite understood it. For instance, it's in Chrome. Does it require Chrome?
There are many questions. So it's not available yet. No. It's going to come out in the developer preview.
They said no.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. So it's just going to show up in the new tab in Chrome, I think, by default. I think that's what they're saying.
That's
so when you hit a new tab,
but if okay, so if I'm running Safari or Firefox, do I go to a site that's chrome.google.com/webapps and then buy stuff there, and then how does it get? I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, most likely, you'd hit a URL. I wasn't clear on this. They didn't get into real deep detail about how this is going to work. But my understanding was that you'd have to sign in to. So you open Chrome or you go to this page and it has featured apps with reviews and ratings and with the ability with prices. Some could have prices.
Yes, they showed Plants vs. Zombies, which is not a free program. It's in Flash.
Right, it's in Flash, so it's basically like buying a mobile app or buying a game. So I assume that you would purchase a license or rights to use it through Google Checkout, and I assume that you'd probably have to be signed into your Google account in order to say, "Hey, I have access to this app" or not. But I actually haven't had a chance to watch the demo video.
Where, if you
web store, I said it wrong.
The chrome.google.com blog /web store says that because web apps listed in the Chrome Web Store are regular web apps built in standard web tools that can be used by anyone using a, quote, modern browser that supports these technologies.
HTML5?
What's the advantage of installing an app from a Chrome Web Store? When you install quotes around that, a web application from the store, a convenient shortcut is added for quickly accessing the app. Installed web apps can also request advanced HTML5 permissions. So I'm guessing what you're doing is you're buying access to the app the way you buy access to, I don't know, the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
But in Chrome, you get a shortcut to it, and it's always there. And then I guess with HTML5, I've got to believe that you go back to the Gears view that there's offline use of an app you bought, right?
Well, you know, Chrome has this concept of native code where you can write code that actually interacts with your desktop, with libraries on your desktop, and probably Kevin knows more about this. But so you can actually build extensions that sort of bridge that gap between your desktop and the browser. So I'm thinking that maybe those apps will be Chrome only, and maybe those apps, you know, things like image editors and maybe really rich games might be Chrome only. But
is this really, though, all about Chrome OS? I mean, remember...
Or is it about the architecture of that, where you have a browser-based functionality, an application world, and Google is just jump-starting it? So I can get rid of my Adobe Photoshop, and I can use the photo application that was demonstrated today, and I can pay for it, and Google's enabling that, so it gets more web development, which gets us away from Apple and Microsoft worlds. No?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a way to find kind of a curated or ranked or like this one place to find good web apps. And it's also a way also for developers to build web apps that generate revenue without relying solely on ads.
But it's not but it's not a closed ecosystem as Apple's App Store is. It's it sounds like it's a wide open ecosystem.
Right, wide open. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
they're going to invite developers to do it, find out how to prepare. I guess wide open to the extent that it's still curated, as Gina said. But they keep on saying that it's just regular web applications that are built for modern browsers, period.
And when I say curated, I think it's just rated by users. I think it's totally crowdsourced. I don't think that there's going to be an editor at Google saying, yes, this. I mean, I think that things are just going to get rated kind of dig style,
right?
From what I understand. They showed this an HTML5 version of TweetDeck, which is my favorite, my Twitter client my desktop Twitter client.
It looked beautiful. It was
really
very nicely done, a drag and drop, everything. Yeah. So, what are these advanced HTML5 permissions? What are those? Does anybody know anything about those?
Sorry, where is it? Where's the quote on that?
It said this. This is in the FAQ. If you go to chrome.google.com/webstore.
Okay.
I'm wondering if that has anything to do with native code extensions.
It's right here. What is the advantage of installing an app from the Chrome Web Store? And
Blaine was talking about this. Blaine, my colleague Blaine Cook, one of the founders of Twitter, has been looking at building web applications, and he's saying HTML offline apps don't quite do everything you want yet. So you can get some permissions, but you're missing the ability to add a web protocol handler. So you can't handle a special kind of URL like iTunes does, for example. And it's very hard for you to access arbitrary websites from a locally installed app, and because that's not well structured by the browsers have this same origin policy, which means that you can't call code that isn't on the same site. You can't call code that isn't on the same site that you're running on.
Right.
The problem is when you've got a local application, that means that you can't call code anywhere on the web easily. Because you can't because of the same origin policy, and so you need a way of getting around that. And the way around that is you proxy through a server somewhere, which is what we do now. But that means you're building dependency on a particular server into your application, which Google is happy about because that's the way they build apps. They're running the servers. But if you're trying to build a standalone app that could deal with a series of different sites. Blaine's example is he's built an ebook reader, so he wants to be able to fetch an ebook from any site and display that. Doing that on the as a client side app is actually quite difficult at the moment.
So it's end to end for the developer. You can create it. You can run it on Google Apps. You can get it paid for through Google. It becomes an app version of the web, kind of.
Yeah, but it can run offline. I mean, you can build a serverless app. It strikes me, I mean, I may be wrong, but it strikes me that this is really all about making Chrome OS be a full-fledged OS. If you can't install apps in Chrome OS easily,
that's
then
exactly where I think
you got nothing.
Yeah.
But it's still sandboxed in the sense that, do apps have access to the file system?
Some again, it's still slightly messy. Resolving this stuff is under debate at the moment of what they should have and what they shouldn't have. And there's
because you're trading functionality for security at that point.
Kind of, but it's more that we have a security model that was built for one environment,
right?
And we're trying to apply it in another environment and work out what makes sense there.
Right.
The other part of this is, we're talking about Google App Stores. They've got 4 of these already, or 3 or 4 of these already. If you think about iGoogle,
that's a widget store, I guess. Yeah, huh?
It's a widget store. It's you can add things to the list. You can search and put stuff in. There's no payment involved, but it has a huge install base of people doing that. They have the Android App Store, which I'm hoping they're going to make better tomorrow. It's on the Android, it works very nicely, but there's these weird things that if I search it on the web and I want to install it on the Android, the way I'm supposed to do that is by taking a photograph of a thing with my Android and then pressing a button there, rather than just saying, okay, yeah, I'll log in here, put it in the queue to download on my Android. So there's some weirdness about that, and you can't easily link into the App Store. Right. Vic in the keynote said, we've got a great app for the schedule at Google I/O. Go to the App Store and search for Google Conference to find it. It's like,
yeah,
that's a marker that you've got something slightly broken there. Right. And then the other one that they released a few months ago, which is the apps for Google Apps for Your Domain Store. What's that called? I can't remember the name of it. You know what I mean, Gina?
The Apps Marketplace.
Apps Marketplace. That's it. Mm-hmm. So that one is similar to this, except that you're installing apps into your Google Apps infrastructure. That can be paid for, and the sysadmin can install an app for the whole company with that. Mm-hmm. So it's clear that they've been thinking about this and building different versions of this over time. And classic Google way, they have 4 ways of doing the same thing by different teams. But so it's interesting to see which of those facets this one will pick up. And the challenge is getting people to pay for web apps. Dario Obasanjo described this as the iGoogle apps for rich people.
Or at least people with disposable income. Yeah, it's $4.99. It's not a whole lot of money, but
is this new? I just see a lot of chatter coming up about the Latitude API. Was that announced?
We talked about that a little bit yesterday. I mean, last week. That
was last week. Okay, so that's not
the fact that Google has 3 million Latitude users. I think they announced the API last week.
Okay, so never mind.
Maybe I'm wrong.
So, no, they announced them today.
Oh, okay. So what are the APIs? So Google has more location information about people than anybody, much more so than any of these.
If you go to the Google Code blog, they have a list of a bunch of announcements, and one of those is the Latitude one.
GoogleMobile.blogspot.com.
GoogleCode.blogspot.com.
Google Mobile.
Man, fragmented much?
Hey, wait a minute. They've also announced a Buzz API. When did that happen?
Whoa. That's the thing. They're petering these things out.
Because I wanted to see some more Buzz stuff.
Well, that was the talks were going on. Oh, there we go.
There's a whole social track.
Over the day. Excellent. That's good. Let's have a look.
So now we're going to read this API in the middle of the show. But with the new Google Latitude API,
read a website to you now.
Build latitude and location into your app. That's very interesting.
Right. So the previous Latitude API was very naive. It didn't actually have any auth in it. So you had to say, I will publish my location to the whole web, and then there was a way to do that.
It was very frustrating, yeah.
And so they've added one that actually has some auth in it now, which could make it more useful. Again, I'm not sure how many people are actually using Latitude. I know I still use it now.
3 million people use it because it happens kind of without your knowledge, and you forget that you turned it on.
Which has some issues right there.
Yeah,
Charlie O'Connell.
Yeah. But,
I mean, I've got it. It runs, and if, for instance,
I can see you on it, but I can't see anyone else I know.
Yeah, you're the only person I can see. No, but you can easily accidentally turn it on or turn it on and forget that you've turned it on. Although they do, I guess, occasionally remind you.
If you go to redeye.firstround.com, Charlie O'Donnell, who's a VC friend of mine, said that his view, rather than having dozens of applications each ask for your location, Google Latitude asks your permission and then puts it in the cloud.
And then anybody can access it.
Use it.
Right.
Right? So he said, imagine linking your ATM or credit card with Google Latitude. You want to make a big withdrawal or charge something big. Your bank can check with Google Latitude and say, are you in the same place as your card?
Yeah, that's not a great use case for me. I mean, the thing is, you know, Fire Eagle was that, and that was the whole point of Fire Eagle.
Yahoo's, had a better location thing, yeah.
And the creator of Fire Eagle just left this week, right?
Tom has left, yes, but Fire Eagle carries on. Yes.
Did you see that a TechCrunch writer said he has proof that Google TV will make its debut tomorrow?
I saw that.
Because on the press site, someone had written, insert TV press release here on sort of a rogue page.
That's what makes it so cuddly and lovable.
This is what I love about Google, right? Didn't Read Write Web kind of track down a YouTube video that they had uploaded sort of early, and they were like, oh my gosh, Google's going to make this announcement. And Google was like, yep. Whoops. We uploaded it a little early. Apple loses phones and bars, and it's a whole big thing. But Google accidentally leaks some information, and they're like, yep, you'll hear about that this week.
But that's, you know, that's because if you're selling hardware, people stop buying the current one, you lose
That's
true.
Money. That's true.
Like, oh,
that's true.
I can dribble it out. So this is interesting. I don't know if this is new, but here's a site, BuzzZ, BuzzZY.com, that's a Buzz search, which was something that was, oddly enough, missing from Buzz, even though Google's in the search business. And a third party has implemented it. I'm glad to see that in terms of popular searches, Robert Scoble and I are right there on the front page. But
I just want to find Scoble and not be found by him.
Yeah, search for him, but don't let him see you. Don't let him see you coming. So that's the API is, I think, enhanced. It looks like, and there's they've got a number of new partners, including Boxy and Plancast, Mebos, Seismic, TweetDeck. One of the things that's been lacking with Buzz is third-party applications. Be great if you could add. Wouldn't you like that, Gina? If you could add Buzz to your TweetDeck?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, get it out of Gmail, and I'm happier.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Gmail connection was just nonsensical, as it turns out.
Looks like they have an OAuth set up for doing that.
This gives place, you know, if you're Low Weekly Mirror looking at this, you're saying, "Oh, good, maybe I have some hope after Twitter."
There's somewhere else to be. Yeah, you know, this is a great opportunity.
Seismic and Ping FM are in the list of already built apps, so yeah, definitely.
Right, and a great opportunity for them. So they've been obviously previewing this API to other people. So this is
so the model. I mean, the API is the open standard stuff that we've been talking about for a while. So
sure, activity streams and
Atom Pub, PubSub Hubbub, and OAuth. So,
but that stuff wasn't yet implemented in the original Buzz API.
No, it wasn't
just
quite
hinted at.
It was hinted at. It was implied that there was some sort of little bits of it, but there wasn't really API endpoints. Great. So now they've got proper read-write support.
That's really great. Good. Maybe Buzz will rise up from second-class citizen. Although
but also, I mean, the other thing is for me, the stronger thing is the same part of coming up with standards that lots of people can implement. The point of the activity streams work that a bunch of us have been involved with is to try and say, okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's really similar here. Why don't we agree on the names for it so that we can move it between sites more easily? Right. So Buzz doing that should hopefully wake people up to this. At the moment, Microsoft's already shipped some great support for it. Facebook is doing activity stream support. MySpace is doing activity stream support. But for Google to say, yes, this is how you do it with Buzz, that may wake people up to and actually get them to say, okay, that's big enough that we'll spend some time on it.
There was some other Google news this week. Google bought Global IP Solutions for a Voip codec. You're in the Voip business, Kevin. I'm going to have to go to you again for our codec explanation. What do they gain with Global IP Solutions?
I don't know the exact details of it, but broadly, it's they've got existing technology for doing audio video codecs. So there are basically different domains for video. I sort of divide it into three. There's I'm playing back pre-recorded video. So that's the domain that VP8 and H.264, all of those ones are in. Their primary thing is I'm encoding this file once and then distributing the file, and lots of people watch the file. So that's YouTube, that's DVDs, Netflix, those kinds of applications. The second case is the kind of thing we're doing now for the people watching, where we're all or the IO stream this morning, where there's something like 15 seconds buffering, so you can. It doesn't matter to some extent how long it takes to encode, You can add some delay there, a small amount of delay. And then the third case is when you're actually having a two-way conversation, like we're having over Skype, or like when you're having a cell phone conversation. And there, the amount of time it takes to encode and transmit becomes fairly significant. Because if that gets above about half a second, it makes the conversation really hard.
Right.
So the difference between the VP8 guys is they were in the first domain, and the codecs and the Voip stuff is in the third domain.
Latency is the key.
So it's sort of a latency focus, yeah.
Right.
And there's different,
GIPS does a good job of this.
But yeah, there's something that lots of people have been using for a while, so
Yeah.
it's a sensible buy for them.
Yahoo, AOL, WebEx, Lotus Conferencing all use it.
Yeah.
I'm going to save one other Google I/O announcement so that Gina can do it in her tip. Just want you to know I didn't forget you, Gina. Was there was there other Google I/O stuff that?
I want to say that I'm delighted that Sports Illustrated, which had this video up for ages about the wonders of the tablet, what we can do on the tablet. And God bless them. I've always said they could do the same thing on the web, and indeed they demonstrated that HTML5 will do all the wonders of tablet stuff.
And they seemed equally as excited as Rupert Murdoch is and everybody else about the iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great watching these old content guys. And he made a few sports jokes that the Googlers just went, baseball, Shaq? I don't know. What do you... I've never heard... You could have heard a pin drop in that room. And the poor guy, because I could tell that he expected these were big applause lines and...
And nothing. Yeah, I felt bad for him.
So pure
in fact, it went over my head that I had missed the sports joke. So, like, I didn't know what was going on, but I was like, why is he so kind of stuttery? And I mean, he seems kind of awkward. Like, he got a little more awkward. I think he realized that he was not among sports fans.
He's a real man in a room filled with
pasty-faced geeks.
Pasty-faced geeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go to baseball games. The sun is there. That fiery ball in the sky. I hate it.
Terry's reputation has always been that, as a friend of mine said a long time ago, that he hunts for his lunch.
He hunts for lunch. Wow. He's a real sportsman. Apparently, Google is going to do a Volt application for OnStar. I can't figure out if it's an Android, because there is an iPhone Volt application for the Chevy Volt, because I played with it, that you could turn on your car from your iPhone. I presume the Android will get that. But I'm wondering if Android will actually be in the car. It sounds like you'll be able to send
up so that you can tell your car before you get to it where you're going.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's some competition for Microsoft's auto stuff, the Ford Sync stuff.
Well, this makes sense because
it was inevitable.
I had a rental car that had a GPS in it the other week, and it was like, this is really annoying. The graphics are like 10 years old, and I've got to try and turn this little knob thing and use it. I end up picking up the Droid and just sticking it on top of the screen in the car and using this instead, because actually it does the nav thing much better. And
I talked to somebody yesterday who still uses his iPhone. He uses his Nexus 1 only as a GPS now.
It's a good GPS.
It is a very good GPS.
Yeah.
Well, except that, it's a very good GPS if you talk to it. If you actually have to try and type something into it, you better park.
Yes, impossible.
The in-car ones have all this stuff that comes up and says, do not use this while moving, and they actually lock you out while you're moving. Someone is going to kill themselves trying to change nav on an Nexus.
Everybody needs a navigator as well as a driver. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Somebody in the second seat. Co-pilot.
I call shotgun and phone.
Yeah, shotgun and phone. That's exactly right. But I think that's interesting. The Volt's going to be an interesting car. It comes out this fall. It's the electric car has a small gas engine to keep it charged. And I drove one at South by Southwest, and they had an iPhone app that lets you turn on the car from the house and all sorts of stuff. And I think there will be an Android app to do that, but it sounds like there will be Android in the OnStar, which is very intriguing. A real opportunity for Google, since they can give away the operating system, and some even pointed out that with a freemium model, they could pay people like Chevrolet to use it. Pay General Motors to use it.
Yeah.
Kindle for Android is on the way. Amazon has announced that not only will they make a Kindle app for Android, but you'll be able to buy from within the app.
Amazing.
Yay.
Crazy idea.
Speaking of Android apps, really important one for me is the New York Times now has its Android app out.
Oh, I have to download it right now.
No fanfare whatsoever. It looks a little bit different, but that's really that and my phone number are the last two reasons I keep using the iPhone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell you, NPD's numbers that the Android handsets outsold the iPhone in the last quarter, hugely up worldwide even. Android is really on a roll in terms of the handsets, and partly it's because of so many good. It's not just one. It's not just the Nexus One or the Droid. It's also the Incredible and the Evo from Sprint's coming out June 4th now, and that also is an HTC handset based on Android.
Yeah, one of the Android developer sessions is how to develop for multiple versions across multiple handsets, just like dealing with that fragmentation. Well, you've got all these different screens.
I mean, the Evo is a 4.3-inch screen, so it's a
and you've got the Dell 5-inch now, I think, announced for June.
Right. And I think it's just a matter of time before there's Android tablets. There's already some in the works, right?
Well, the German one, right, is now for sale at the
they changed the name from the WePad. What's it called now? It's not the WePad.
MeTab.
MeTab. Okay.
Went from the WePad to the MeTab? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the WePad did sound sort of like I have a puppy.
Did you hear Bill Maher's joke about the pad brand?
No, what did he say?
I want to get in trouble for saying this. It was Bill Maher. He said that he was making fun of Obama for acting like he's just, I don't do technology stuff. And then he said the McCain is that much more so, and it's really that so. And he thinks the Xbox is something you put on, or sorry, the iPad is something you put on your Xbox. Sorry. Leave it at that.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to think about that for a moment.
I brought that up, but
apparently Google's. We're just going to change the subject now. Apparently Google is no longer going to sell the Nexus One online, and I don't think anybody's going to sell it in the store. So I think the Nexus One may be headed for the junkie.
I was sad and went into denial immediately about that announcement because I really liked the Nexus One. I didn't really know what that meant. I mean, it sounded like they were saying the web store didn't really work out. We got early adopters, but not really anyone else. But does that mean that
the phone worked, but the store didn't work? People want to touch it. They didn't announce
here's the problem.
that T-Mobile was going to have it in the store.
It's only T-Mobile because Sprint says we're not going to do it. Verizon says we're not going to do it. So it's only going to be T-Mobile.
AT&T only does it full retail, no subsidy.
I think that this phone is, sad to say, but is going to be eclipsed by the Incredible, which is this phone better, and the Evo, and maybe the Motorola Droid, which everybody now who went to Google I/O has one of. You were saying, Gina, that there were a lot of, in the audience, you could hear Droid.
Yeah, people were booting them up.
Booted up. Droid.
Yeah. Droid. Like all around you.
Droid.
Yep.
I still do not understand what Motorola was thinking.
Aliens in Toy Story.
Droid. What did they make? Why did they make it so scary? The ads are still scary.
Oh, my friend was telling me that his 3-year-old daughter is like, Daddy, why is the scary robot punching the screen again? Like when the commercial comes on.
They're horrible. It's the red eye of Sauron. I don't understand
right,
it.
the red eye when you boot it up. And, you know, and the iPhone commercials were like, happy humans in shiny sunlit places. Like, like having great lives. And the Droid commercial is like this dark, rainy, stormy robot. And
it's for the gadget guys. That's what
it is. It's
that's
true.
Dumb because you know what?
I'm not saying it isn't dumb, but it was not as dumb as those pre-ads with a scary, not quite human woman in it.
I think it's right there though. And you saw what it did to the pre. I just want to say.
Well, apparently they have lots of extra ones because they give them away pretty. Yeah. The drop of a hat.
A few extra pre's lying around. One last story, then we'll get to our tip, tool, and number of the week. Google had to admit, right when Facebook was getting all this privacy issue, and, we talked a lot about, in fact, we talked almost exclusively about Facebook last week. Notice not one mention this week. Google admits that the roving vans it was using to collect Street View information and Wi-Fi data, all of which, like Skyhook, all of which was kind of kosher, had some old code in there, which was also saving data.
Yeah, this is a pretty serious issue. I got some email from listeners who were like, well, do you trust them now? And which I thought was a reasonable thing to ask because we've been talking about trust in Facebook. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a total apologetic fangirl. But it's like that blog post was like, we made a mistake. Here's how it happened. We failed badly. We're really sorry. We're separating the data. We're deleting the data. We're figuring out the best ways to do that and had us not do this again. I mean, they posted it. It was like late on a Friday night, right, or Friday afternoon.
Right.
So it was Friday night Eastern time. I mean, it was a big mistake, but I felt like they treated it with the right kind of tone, and I think that they were pretty transparent about it.
Certainly.
So
it was a PR disaster in that sense, but in terms of reality, the thing is, all the conspiracy theorists, especially in Germany, come out like crazy now, and I say, try to tell me what the business benefit is of a random, occasional bit of data from browsing on one moment in time on one street in Hamburg.
Yep. It's true.
What can you possibly do with that?
I know people kept their headlines like mistakenly, with the quotes around it. It's like, what would they have done with that? What good would that data have been to them? I mean, these cars were driving down the street. They were maybe stopped at a light.
They were not only driving, but they were changing channels. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, changing channels several times per second or per minute, right?
Got nothing.
I just saw some coverage at Spiegel in German. I'll spare you the link, but along with any future jokes. And
Thank you.
They finally got some sanity about it. They finally said, listen, there have been earlier reports that Google is lasering buildings to get the dimensions. There have been earlier reports that Google was doing what Skyhook was doing. What can they really do with this? It was the first sane coverage I've seen in a long time about Google in Germany. But now there's a criminal investigation going on about this.
I was going to say I thought Google over-apologized, but you can't over-apologize in a climate in which now you're getting investigated criminally. I mean,
here's the irony to me is that you fear government getting data, and now government is going to Google saying, "Give us the data." Well, let's give it to everybody.
Yeah.
Back from Ottawa, one thing that just shocked me there that I learned there is that the Canadians, I'm told, and I asked a couple people about this and said, "Oh yeah, that's the way it is." Their major fear about privacy rather right now is the Patriot Act. And they don't trust the cloud in Canada because of what can be done, what Americans can do worse to Canadian data on Canadian soil even than American soil. And so there's this paranoia about privacy and the cloud going on.
So it's us they fear.
Yeah.
Well, this is this is the sort of weird thing about the EU, because the EU has data retention laws that says ISPs have to keep information for 6 months that identifies your internet traffic, so the government can snoop through it later. Right. And then they get all sniffy about Google putting the odd packet here and there. So I'm hoping the Germans will be consistent about this and help vote down the data retention laws that Org is campaigning against in the UK. The other bit
Kevin,
for me of this,
I think 2005. In 2005, I think it was, I've been doing research on my next book, the government was going to demand that Google hold on to all Gmail data, and Google threatened to pull Gmail out of Germany and not do it there. And you'd think that the German government would understand that this is not the best thing for the government there to be doing. And they were deaf to the irony of it.
But this is it's the same thing as like the UK, where they have video cameras on every street corner that is being recorded, and you've no idea where it's going. But they all got upset about Google Street View driving around and publishing it on the web because they could see the results. And there's some very odd stuff there. The thing that I didn't like about the Google's announcement on that was Alan Eustace basically saying, "Oh, you should secure your Wi-Fi networks anyway," which is like, no, that isn't the right answer, because the internet in general, anyone who's transferring packets, and that can be anyone because of the way routing works, gets to see the contents of them. So Wi-Fi is not some sort of magic edge case here. Actually, the whole of the internet is like that. And if you really care about security, you want to encrypt the channel that you're sending it over. You want to use HTTPS, or you want to use PGP or something like that. You don't want to say, "Oh, I'm going to do some boundary security and then just route this over the internet anyway." And guess what? AT&T is sniffing every packet that passes through. So there is this issue of understanding where the actual security problems in this stuff lie, but it all ends up being very obfuscated. And I am worried that there seems to be this campaign that says having an open Wi-Fi network is a terrible sin against society now, as opposed to providing a public benefit, which seems very odd to me.
Let's hear from phone. Leo, explain to me because you said it before in the show, but it just gives me ammunition when this discussion comes up. So for my future reference, what does Skyhook do with that data? Why is it beneficial to gather that?
Oh, it's really useful. A lot of companies, I think, I don't know if Apple uses the Skyhook data, but a lot of companies use the data so that when you're on Wi-Fi, but you don't have a GPS, as in the first generation iPad, it can identify where you are. What Skyhook does, what Google was doing, is as they go through mapping GPS coordinates, they also map SSIDs and MAC addresses of access points. Now, this stuff is being broadcast through the air anyway. It does it for both, encrypted and unencrypted access points because it's going through the air anyway. And by collecting that information, they can then say when you see an access point on a Wi-Fi enabled device, oh, you're 100 meters from this and you're 20 meters from this, you must be here. And they could do a pretty good job. So that's why if you had an early iPad, you could actually use Google Maps because of Skyhook. And it made sense for Google to collect that information. I hope they don't stop collecting that information.
Well, they did in Germany.
Yeah,
well, they said they're going to stop in future. Yeah, in Germany, but they've got geo-IP guessing anyway. This just makes it more accurate. I mean, Google has been guessing where you are based on your IP and getting it embarrassingly wrong sometimes.
Yeah, because your IP address alone is not very granular. It's
right.
Just it's through your internet service provider. So if I use Comcast, it might get it within 100 miles.
Yeah,
it's not very useful.
It depends on if you're proxying and weird things. But but they had this thing where they the thing is they were using it this weird way where they would then default you into a different Google front end, which means that if you're American, you went to Paris, they decided you wanted it Google in French, which is like
that's right.
You're slightly missing the point here. Geography is not destiny.
Right.
I like to find out about places in France, but I don't actually want you to give me the results in French.
That's a good point.
No, that happened to me in China all of a sudden. And now in French, I could at least figure out how to get the English page. In China, I was lost. I was like, I guess I won't be using Google today. Anyway, any other?
Seems like,
go ahead.
I was going to say, when I realized that they were doing that, like collecting SSIDs for location awareness for Wi-Fi devices, it just seems like, I don't know, the images, the Street View images by my home are so old. I mean, don't access points move so often and come up and go down? It seemed like it's surprising that the results that they get are as good as they are, because I imagine that data changes so much more than actual buildings.
If you have more than one, you're in pretty good shape. But you're right. Occasionally, you'll be positioned out in the ocean or something. But but if you have a couple or more, and in any urban area, you're going to have many more. Plus, you can see history.
So you can triangulate.
Exactly. You can do a very good job. And if you ever use a Wi-Fi only device and it knows where you are, it's kind of spooky, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I popped up in my MacBook and just started, Firefox and Chrome, they all have location.
Yeah, and they know where you are, and that's why. That's how they do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think probably the Feed API, which I kind of mentioned quickly earlier, is probably worth mentioning because it's based on PubSub, which we talked about like several episodes ago, a long time ago. This is the video that ReadWriteWeb had seen before it got announced. But there's this new Feed API, or this Feed API upgrade that lets they announced today that lets developers embed feeds on their websites, and they get pushed. They get updated automatically, and so new feed items show up without refreshing the page.
That's very cool. I really like that.
Yeah, really sweet. So you get a little taste of real time. Very easily, and it's literally just like 5-6 lines of JavaScript.
We just move closer and closer to this notion that everything's real time, that the idea of a static web page is just meaningless, that everything is updating all the time, and I think that's great. That's how I like to consume content.
It's the future of news, folks.
Sure,
absolutely.
Sure.
The future of communication.
Everything's a ticker.
It's what Marissa Meyer has been saying. I got crap from in the chat room for saying it too often for a while, but it's the hyper-personal news stream.
Right.
It's all your stuff. Where is that API, Gina?
It's on the the Ajax APIs blog.
Of course.
Google Ajax search api.blogspot.com.
I love it.
I had no idea Google had so many blogs. So many developer blogs.
Google Code as well. So if you go to googlecode.blogspot.com, the Buzz stuff is linked from there. Is
the Buzz the same as the API? The
Feed API.
Feed API, is that the same API?
The Feed API.
Feed is different. Yeah.
Code.google.com/APIs/Ajax feeds. Yeah, you're not going to type that in right now. That's okay. Just Google Feed API and you'll see
You get the idea.
So this could feed, this enables me to put any content to feed it out to sites all around, right?
Well, it's the same as RSS or Atom feeds you've already got, except that this means that when they change, your site can change rapidly.
So
and it will work. Will it work with any Atom or RSS feed? I mean, do I have to have a special kind of feed?
Any feed.
Any feed.
Yep.
Any feed.
So here's what I've always wanted. Not always. Last 2 years I wanted. is that when I post a blog post, I want people who link to it to be able to basically subscribe to any corrections that I make.
Mm.
Is this getting there?
No.
Ah, okay.
You could have a corrections feed, but then they'd have to, at their end, they'd have to subscribe to it using the API.
That's tricky because that's a merge case. So the problem, you know, I had this with Technorati where people would complain they were seeing the same post twice, and that's because someone had corrected a typo in it. So there's upsides and downsides to that. What happens?
Create a corrections feed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, there's like a small thing where I'm correcting a transposed letter, and then there's an update that's got you know, oh damn, I actually got something badly wrong here. Here's my correction. Here's my retraction. So yeah, there's nuances to how you do that. Now, if it's actually just modifying the thing that next time you view it, that's okay. But Buzz had this problem where everything would then propagate back to the top again, and then it gets annoying. And when Wave has a bit of that too, doesn't it, Gina? Where every little tiny edit pulls it back up to the top, and suddenly it's like, I've read this thing 3 times. What are you on about? And you can at least hit the space key to sort of go through and see where the change was. But if there's lots of them, it's not that helpful.
Right. I want a "What are you on about" button in Wave. Instead of Mark all is right. What are you on about?
I always thought every web page should have a "huh" button, and you click that and it explains what the hell's going on. We actually implement that at twit.tv, but it did not become a standard. No, actually, we're doing a redesign, and one of the things that we're doing in the redesign is making everything real time. So there'll be streaming text, and this actually makes it very much easier for us to create widgets that will update in real time on the web page. So it's good. They also announced a font API. This is kind of interesting. You know, there already is in a CSS tag that allows you to use real fonts. I'm not sure if this is the CSS3 font face standard or if this is something different, but they're going to support.
It is based on that.
Okay, good, because I don't think we need another one.
So the point of this is there is that, but it's very hard to actually get hold of fonts because embedding fonts on the web is difficult. And there's Jeff Veen's startup that's been doing this for a while of finding ways to license this.
Right.
And what this is here's a bunch of fonts that are in the public domain that you can use across the web.
And you can count on Google servers being there.
And Google servers will keep them up. And I assume they're going to let other PD fonts be submitted to this and host them as well.
Oh, this is great. So these are all free.
So there's a way of getting into them that way. But they've got the Droid fonts, and they've got a series, some reasonably nice looking serify ones there.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's not as as rich as what's the name of?
Is it Typekit? Typekit, something like that.
Typekit, yeah, Typekit. Typekit is a much more ambitious effort for this that's designed to work with the foundries and let you license them. And I know that they work together to get this working. So that's good. It means that we should.
I'm glid it's support. It's a standard. That's great.
It's like, did you see the Scribd stuff?
No. What did Scribd do?
So Scribd's announcement was that they will convert your documents into HTML5 now, and they will embed them with the real fonts.
Whoa! Lovely.
If you've seen that, so basically they've gone from being an embedded weird thing to you upload a document and they munge it and give you an HTML5 document, but they link to the real fonts and make those work as well. So it suddenly becomes this. All the type is selectable in these complicated documents. So even the
let me guess this. So this is the beginning of a new open word processing standard.
Which called HTML5. Nice?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So this then carries that on.
Oh,
I hope that Google Docs will stick with that, because Google Docs started out being our format is HTML, and it's twisted a little bit since then. And I hope they're going to sort of realize that this is the right answer. I think they're smart enough to do that.
So this is neat. I'm very excited about this.
So we're starting to see, this stuff, the Sports Illustrated thing that the guy showed, although like slightly cheesy, was basically saying we can do this rich, complicated, beautiful stuff in HTML5 now. We're not having to render it in weird ways. And Kevin Lynch showing off Dreamweaver and saying we're publishing HTML5 properly now and giving you tools to edit that. This is all encouraging, because we're seeing the tools catch up to the technology, which is nice. But the script stuff is really nice, because they've done a really nice job of you upload your document and they work out the complicated weirdness of turning it into a nice web page.
Wow, that's really neat.
Yeah, very useful.
What an interesting way to publish now.
Does this maybe kill the PDF someday?
Oh God,
That'd be a
so.
wonderful
Let's
thing.
hope so. Oh, Adobe, you're really going to hate us today. No,
We want to put you out of business, Adobe.
PDF is a print-oriented format. Really, it's a fidelity-oriented format, but it's PostScript, which means it's like move this here.
I know.
This thing.
Tell digital editors that.
Right, that's all they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an ego format.
I don't think that I think there are more capabilities in right now in PDF, but maybe not in the long run. With if HTML5 really develops along the lines it's going to, you'd have animation, you'd have video, you'd have, and especially if there's tools to do the automatic conversion like Script.
Well, that's the thing that Script has done here, which is they've sat down, reimagined their product, and said, okay, we're going to place the big bet on HTML5 as a document format.
Brilliant.
I'm really impressed with that.
Very exciting. Script has always been cool, but
if I published my newspaper using the API fonts, I could present things. I could produce and present things on the web and in paper, kind of at the same time, right?
Yes.
Yes, and then the other thing is that the fallback works. Which means if you look at it on a
it degrades
an
gracefully.
browser,
It
degrades gracefully and gives you a textual view. So even if you look at it on a pre-smartphone browser, you'll see something there because the HTML still makes sense. They just won't read the new fonts.
I'm working with a guy named John Payton at Journal Register Company, which is an oft bankrupted newspaper company that he's making go digital first, print last. And we sat talking about he inherited this technology there when he took over as CEO that I haven't heard this phrase this in years. He said, well, they still had VDTs. Remember that?
Yes, video display terminals.
Exactly. I hadn't heard that in years.
Yeah.
This is the last time I went to the doctor.
That's every newsroom had a VDT.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
if it was modern.
What he had to spend on this. And I said, I think you could produce an entire newspaper using free tools. And by God, he did it.
Good for him.
And he used nothing but free tools up to the point of the press. And he showed me last week the piece of paper he had in his hand that came off the press that was produced by nothing but free tools. Pretty cool.
Very nice.
Good for Script, because they really, unfortunately, they were turning into a platform for piracy. And there were real issues about all of the trademark material that was on Script. This is a really good direction for them to go. I think this is fantastic. And a non-trivial thing to do as well.
Yeah, no, and it's putting down the marker for Microsoft Docs.com and Google Docs to say, okay, this can be done.
Wow. Well, and it would be a simple thing to publish, or should be a simple thing to publish to HTML5.
Yes, suddenly they've generated an HTML5 version that.
That's what Office should do.
Yeah.
Office should publish to HTML5. I wonder.
So let's do the countdown clock. How long before Google buys Scribd?
All right. Hey, this has really been fun. Let's get our tool, tip, and number of the week, and we can go home. But I think I can say safely now that I'm going to have to be back here at 8:30 tomorrow morning because it seems like they saved the best for tomorrow.
Looks that way. 8:30, man. You'll be at the cottage, Leo?
I'll be here. I'll be at the cottage. You can come up if you want, but I think you're going to be going to the conference.
I'm going to be trying to stay awake
another
in front
wave.
of a decaf coffee at
Yeah. You did it. Gina and Adam Pash and Kevin and I were in a live wave during the I.O., and that was fun.
Yeah, we should do that again tomorrow, too.
Yeah,
Let's do it tomorrow again. What do you say?
Yeah.
And this time I'll have an icon because Dan on the Wave team sent me a note saying, you But in the old days, it took the icon from your profile, right?
Yeah, at some point it did, and then that's changed. Wave has changed a lot.
They changed my Wave.
They did. They keep changing that Wave. They're moving target to write a book about.
So
that's for sure.
Yeah, good for you. I figured it out, and I have added an image. Thank you, Dan.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, Gina, let's start with your tip since it's, I think, Wave appropriate.
Yes. So my tip is really simple today. Wave opened up to everyone, so you don't need an invite. which is great. You don't have to request an invite. You don't have to ask friends. You don't have to post on Twitter who has invites. You don't have to wait some indefinite amount of time. If you have a Google account, a vanilla Google account, you can sign right in and have Wave. And if you do that, your Wave address will be your username at googlewave.com. It's just mapped to your Gmail address. If you are a Google Apps user, you have Google Apps for your domain like I do, you can enable the, Wave on your domain, and then you can have your name at your domain.com will be your Wave address, which is also really exciting because the Wave team found that, Wave really got used with groups of people who had kind of, who are, groups of people trying to get things done, right? Not public chats or journalists or, mostly that was the best use case. There was a bunch of other cool Wave announcements for developers. They created a data API, which will make it really easy for people to make Wave clients. So I'm sure we're gonna see an Android app, possibly an iPhone app, other good Wave clients that work other than the website. And you can build robots and host them on your own web server now. You have to do it on App Engine. They open source the rich text editor, which is really good. So those are all really developer announcements. My tip is just to enable Wave on your Google Apps account, or just sign in if you never got an invite.
Wave.google.com, is that all you have to do?
Yeah, that's all you got to do.
And I am impressed by the number of new robots or widgets that they've added to Wave, which will, I think, make it a much more useful tool. I think that's the kind of thing that they needed to do to really...
Yeah, there's a lot of really good ones. You can export Waves to Google Docs. You can, there's like this brainstorming backup napkin, sketching Wave. There's video conferencing. The Ribbit gadget is awesome. So yeah, and they have the extensions. They have featured extensions in the sidebar now, so you can explore those. So a lot has changed in Wave in the past few months. So if you haven't logged in since a few months ago, when people were talking about it a lot more, log back in and check it out.
And how much do you have to update the book, Gina?
The book's changelog is getting lengthy. Let's say that, but I'm handling it like a software project. I have a changelog page on the website.
Good.
I tried to future-proof the text and pointed to the changelog. So yeah, there's been quite a bit of editing and rewriting going on the wiki and the book.
And now I've been fooled because I've been saving my invitations, and I guess I didn't need to.
It's good though. It'll be someday. It'll be like in the Google Museum. You can say here's a screenshot of way back when Wave was invited.
invitations.
I hope that's not your number, Jeff Jarvis. What is your number of?
My number is 117%. That was Vic's slide today at the keynote that TechCrunch highlighted. That's in Forrester says between 2004 and 2009, web usage increased 117%. No surprise there. The interesting thing is that listening to the radio is down 18%, reading newspapers is down 17%, reading magazines is down 6%, and watching TV is 0 growth.
Well, 0 is better than nothing.
Yeah.
0 is better than down. I'm surprised it's down. It's 0. I thought more people were watching more TV.
I thought so too, but according to Forrester, so I mean, no great surprise here, obviously. As my tweet on this was that, like soldiers, the old ones don't die; they just fade away.
Right. The old media just fades away. My toy of the week, and it really is a toy, is for Google Reader users. It's called Play. It's kind of a new way to look at Google Reader items. And it's the kind of thing you might want to have just running on a machine in the background. If you go to google.com/reader/play, it essentially creates a slideshow of your with images of your Google Reader items. And so it's just a fun way to look at it. You can still star them and like them and share them as you go. There's a few oddball controls over here on the side that you could take a look at and play with. Choose categories and so forth. It's kind of fun.
That is really fun. I'm getting
cool?
some really good ones. Yeah. This is based on my subscriptions? Yeah,
well,
I guess so.
It is. I'm not signed in right now, so it's giving me kind of a best of thing. But if you sign in, it will be your subscriptions. Yeah. So, in fact, it might be fun to sign out just to see. Probably this is what's hot on Google Reader, which I read religiously because people are crazy. I love the stuff that's hot on Google Reader.
There's that recommendations tab. I think it's that one, right?
Okay, because these are really good. Some of these are just really
better than my feed. Who are these people? I want to follow them. Yeah, my stuff is just full with tech news. It's boring.
Right, exactly. That's a thing. There's too many goofy kitten pictures.
Yeah, I want more kitten pictures. So if you want kitten pictures, sign out of your Google Reader account and go to google.com/reader/play.
All right.
Thank you for playing with us, Kevin Marks. Boy, I'm glad you were here to explain the codec situation and so forth.
Sorry if that was a bit long.
No. Really, really, really valuable. And that's the, that's the thing I really like to do on all of our shows is get the actual stuff, not the short, popular version, but the actual stuff. And I think it's great to have you. Couldn't have a better person on to talk about that. Kevin Marks is at ribbit.com. And anything else you want to plug these days, Kevin?
Ribbit. The point of Ribbit is it's web APIs for doing telephony stuff. So if you're building a web app and think, oh, it'd be really nice to send an SMS, make a phone call, that's what Ribbit's for.
And there's a Ribbit robot in Google Wave.
Yeah, there
you
is.
Call it a widget, a bot? What do you call it?
There's gadgets and there's bots.
It's a gadget.
So it's a gadget. Yep.
Okay. And Gina Trapani, it's been, again, another good person to have on a show like this. I can't think of a better person, a developer, but also an expert on Google Wave and on productivity. She writes at smarterware.org, and I'm sure there'll be lots of posts there from Google I/O. Come up and visit us. You're in the neighborhood.
No, I'm so close, but so far. Gotta get to the cottage.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on the show. I know you want to get back to the conference, so we'll let you go.
So here's one more I just saw.
Yes.
Google have launched a prediction API where you give it data and then it tells you what to think about it.
Oh, what the future will hold.
Is it April 1st?
No, this is real. I saw this. Yeah.
It's machine learning. So you give it like, this text is in French, this text is in English, whatever, and then you say, here's some text, what is it?
French.
So that sounds like fun.
And it's
I'm sure
restful.
Gina can think of interesting things to do with that with her projects.
Yeah, I think in a way Think Tank might really benefit from something like this.
Yeah, I definitely am going to check this out. I'm looking at it now. It looks really interesting.
This is why...
Sentiment analysis,
Yeah. Sentiment, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Oh, did you see the sarcasm analysis paper this week? Because this is the problem with sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis cannot detect sarcasm. And somebody has written an academic paper of, how can we find sarcasm? Well, we looked for sarcasm and marked it up. And
the problem with sarcasm is it's fundamentally a lie. And computers don't understand lying.
Right.
So they were looking for sarcasm signals. It's a really, really amusing paper.
Fascinating. Yeah.
It's just like Americans don't understand irony, Kevin.
Indeed.
Or
that's
Twitter
what makes it fun. Is you can say all these things to them and they just nod.
I'm trying to think of something sarcastic to say, but I can't. So I will just say thank you for being here, Mr. Jeff Jarvis. Jeff is at buzzmachine.com. And we really always appreciate your comments, too. We've got such a great panel for discussing this. You know, Google is so widespread now, but the areas of expertise we got here really makes it fun. So thank you, guys.
However, need a codec to decode codec talk for me. I'm completely useless.
Well, I hope we didn't put you in too much pain.
No. I had nothing to add.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. I guess we will go back live tomorrow morning, 8:30 Pacific, 11:30 Eastern Time, 15:30 UTC for the second part of Google's I/O announcements, in which we expect to hear more about Google TV, Android. Anything else, Gina, you think we're going to get?
I think it's going to be mostly Android.
Yeah,
I think that's it. Yeah.
So we'll go live 8:30 a.m. with breaking news, and then of course we're back to our regular schedule at 11.
Team coverage, as they say on TV.
Team coverage. Well, I think I'm going to be the team tomorrow.
I'll be live waving.
Yeah, we'll watch your wave. That'll make it a team. Thank you all for joining us. We do Twig every Wednesday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, 2100 2000 UTC at live.twit.tv, so you can watch us do it live. But easiest thing probably to do is download the podcast, available everywhere better podcasts are given away absolutely free. We'll see you next time on This Week in Google.